What's up, traders, and welcome back to another YouTube video. So in today's video, I'm just going to do a quick recap um, on step index. The last time we spoke about this, there was a bearish trend that we were looking at on step index, and there were a few things that I spoke about. So we're just going to have a look at how that's played out and what is my expectation going forward. Before I get into the video, let me throw in my disclaimer. Remember, I am not licensed nor qualified to offer financial, investment, or trading advice. Everything I speak about on these videos is purely my own opinion. I do not recommend trading live capital, but if you do it with capital that you are willing to lose, because you could lose your entire investment, as trading leveraged products is very risky. So let's get straight into step index. And as I said, we're just going to do a quick recap of exactly what's been going on. So the last time we spoke, I do recall that there was a zone that we spoke about on step index, which was basically this area of support that has just turned resistance, right? So we can see that it basically respected that area quite nicely. We can see a nice, beautiful drop away from this area in here. And yeah, basically price has reacted from there. So if we look at it on the 4-hour chart, I think we would have been around this area here. The last time that we spoke about this, I stand to be corrected. Or we could have actually left this area, and I was looking for a retracement into these areas for us to take further sells to the downside. We didn't get any substantial retracements, but if you trade chart patterns and so forth, obviously there was some ascending pattern in here. There was a breakout, there was a retest, and price did go further to the downside thereafter. Even in this area here, there was an ascending pattern breakout. There was no retest, unfortunately, and price did obviously take off to the downside. Now, with that being said, I just want to have a look again at this area on the weekly time frame, and there's now obviously a new zone that I would want to focus on, and that is basically in this area in here, right? So now price has obviously reacted from the previous zone, and if you'd like, you could still sort of keep the line on there just to say, well, okay, price has reacted from that area. And now what we can see is we can see a break and we can see a retest to that area. And we should expect to see price push a bit lower, right? Substantially lower. Ultimately, I would look for something into here as final take profits down in here. And if price then proceeds lower, then we just basically be looking for something lower than that. Ultimately, we can't necessarily show where price is going to extend to because right now we have no data to the bottom side of that chart. So basically targeting would just be a wait and see game thereafter. So for logical targets, I'm just going to be looking for price to, at minimum, get back into the lows of this candle in here, right? So that would basically be my areas for targeting. So looking at that right now on the weekly time frame, we would say that this is my new resistance turn support, right? We can see that if we actually drag this zone over, right, we can see that price actually reacted from the specific area multiple times in the past. So we can see that price came down, reacted down, reacted down, reacted down, reacted, broke structure, increased volume to go through this area. So this activity here must be noted. The fact that there was an influx of volume that drove through this area in here, right? So that tells us, hey, that there was huge participation in this area of the marketplace. Price came back and we can see failed to break, retraced, did a false break, and has now broken back to the downside. I want you to notice the increase in volume when price does, every time price trades through this level, right? We can see even when it did this minor breakout to the upside, we can see that's quite a healthy candle to the upside. So overall, I'm still looking at sells. This is the weekly time frame. I am still looking at sells and step index to the downside. Ultimately, we can see that it's already tapped the zone that I was looking at, right? Whether we're going to get a deeper trade into that area or not, I'm not going to be able to say, right? But all I can say for now is that price is in sell territory, and we should expect it to trade substantially lower. Ideally, what I would generally do is just use fibs for an extension for take profits, and perhaps my first take profit would be here. So let's just make that a green line. Apologies for background noise. So that would be my first take profit. Second take profit would be around that area, and then my final take profit would be around that area, and then anything else would just be a wait and see game thereafter, right? We cannot say for now how low price is going to go, but those are some areas that I would expect to see price going. Now, for that, what I would also do now is looking at the daily time frame, right? So on the daily time frame, I would just retrace this or refine this to this specific area here. Why that specific area? Because ultimately, when you look at it, that's where all the activity came in, right? You can see price stalled in that area, pushed out, came back, rejected, broke through, retest, broke through, retested and traded higher, and then broke back to the downside. Even after breaking to the downside, what do we see? We see a pullback. We see, so there's quite a lot of activity in that area, basically, right? So looking at that now, what I've got on the daily time frame is we've got a trend, a slight trend to the upside. So higher high, higher low, forming a higher high, and now we've got a minor break to the downside. Did that actually break this low? I'm not quite sure. Okay, it did wick below this low, but I would not consider this a break of market structure. And as a result, I wouldn't technically be bearish on this time frame. But if we drop down to the 4-hour time frame, we'd see clear breaks of structure to the downside. So that's completely fine. Now, what I would be looking at on the daily, just because it's less candles, when we look at the 4-hour, we should have a bit of an idea already of what we're expecting to see price doing next, as opposed to going down to the 4-hour and trying to figure out what price is meant to do next, right? So on the 4-hour chart, on the daily chart, I would essentially be looking at just to draw my fib to give myself an idea of a zone. So my first opportunity should materialize in this area here, right? Between this area here. And this is just a concept that I like to call the amateur pattern. Those of you guys who are in my mentorship or have done mentorship in the past would understand what's actually happening in that area, even though we don't have, the proper setup right now. It is giving us a lot of confluences to the downside. So that would be the first area that I would be looking to see some sort of activity. And then should price not react from there, then I'd be looking for something a bit higher in that area to take sells to the downside. So right now we can see that price has traded into that zone. We can see that, hey, when we look over here, in fact, yeah, I think I'm actually going to leave that zone. We can see that if we can get price to most likely give us a minor bounce from there and then perhaps pull back in, then break down, and then perhaps it's going to give us something like a head and shoulders pattern, and then we look for price to continue back to the downside from that area in there. Looking at the 1 hour, because I just want to see how structure is forming right now. On the 1 hour, okay, price is in a bit of a significant zone right now. Unfortunately, it's not something that I'm going to speak about on these videos, so I'm not going to touch on that for now. This is an interesting area right here. This is an interesting area right here where we can see some sort of minor pullbacks in price before it proceeds to the downside. But ultimately, this is the area that I am looking at. I would look to see if we get some double tops in here or head and shoulders pattern for us to take this price back to the downside. Those are ultimately the things that I would be looking to see happen in here. Even if I see it happening on the 1 hour time frame in that same zone, I'd be okay with taking that trade. Ultimately, if we don't see that forming as clear as we want to, what we would then just need to see is we would need to see this 1 hour trend switch bearish again, right? You can see that now when you drop down to the 1 hour chart, it's now showing a bullish trend, right? So we would want to see this 1 hour trend switch bearish. However that happens, and then we would be able to start looking for sells back to the downside on the 1 hour shift of market structure. So that is basically my idea of step index right now, where it is. Ultimately, I'm still long-term bearish on this, or short-term bearish actually, if you can think about it, because it's not that big of a distance on the weekly chart. But obviously on the lower time frames where we would be looking for trades, it is a much longer term, right? We could look at this happening over the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, because step index is quite choppy. So I hope this video did add some value. be sure to go back, do your own analysis, have a look at your charts. And this is just something that should give you some sort of educational guidance in terms of your charting and so forth. Never take trades based on what you see on these videos, because I don't give precise areas where you could take trades. I'm not going to be just hopping into the market. There are things that I need to see happening in these areas prior to me qualifying it as a trade opportunity. So for now, it's just simply bias in terms of the analysis. It hasn't necessarily materialized a trade setup or a trade opportunity yet. So until next time, it has been a pleasure, as always, to share with you guys. And I am wishing you a blessed and profitable remainder to the trading week, as well as a blessed weekend. I'll catch up with you guys again next time.